Bricks and Minifigs is your one-stop shop for all things LEGO. Hit the link below to find a store near you.
Hey, so my name is Joe Conley, and this is my mock. This is The Last of Us. So if you're not familiar, The Last of Us was originally a kind of zombie apocalypse, post-apocalyptic video game that became an HBO TV show. So this is the sequence that happens towards the beginning of episode 2 of the first season, where they are actually leaving the Boston quarantine zone and coming out and seeing the destruction there. So it's just kind of this really cool big scene where you have this skyscraper that's partially collapsed and crashed into this other skyscraper. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, that seems like it would be almost impossible to build with Lego. And so I immediately wanted to do it. And so I basically spent the last year and a half putting this whole thing together.
Yeah, and it's a very eye-catching display because of that. So go ahead and talk about that section and kind of how you first approached that as you were imagining this and how it would come together.
Yeah, so basically I knew that the interior of this would need to be made out of Technic. And so I actually kind of started with figuring out how the base would actually do. And so there's actually a picture here that actually kind of shows what that looks like. So you basically have an interior Technic frame that's bolted down using Technic lift arms into the base, and then it's actually resting on a bed of regular Lego bricks. And so from that, I basically then just rotated the rest of it and then built Technic all the way up, and then just attached basically the outside of that to the interior Technic frame going all the way up.
So you're able to build all those kind of like facade pieces. Are those in sort of panels that you've attached to the side, or how big are those sections?
Yeah, so basically, the entire thing actually comes apart in two pieces. So basically, the first 3 levels of this is all one piece, and then everything above that is an entirely separate piece. So it's all connected together, and I basically just attached it in panels using Technic pins and plates onto the actual Technic frame. So it's actually kind of very similar to how modern skyscrapers are actually built, because most modern skyscrapers have an internal frame, usually based around the elevator shaft in a series of columns, and then the exterior of the buildings are just then kind of bolted onto the outside. So it's pretty similar to actually how it's actually constructed.
Yeah. And that takes us to the second skyscraper, which contrasts very nicely with all the glass.
Yeah, so this was actually a lot of fun to build, and there's actually interior details for this one. I couldn't put a lot of interiors for this one just because it was going to actually be too heavy, and I was going to worry it was going to be tipping over. But we've got detailed interiors. So the first area at the base floor is just kind of a reception area plus a fancy bar. We've got a boardroom. This third section here is actually based on the Bon Appetit test kitchen, which is actually in One World Trade Center in New York. So if you actually kind of go and look in there, you can actually see a lot of the details of the kitchen. Then we've got it's not really in the penthouse, but kind of a fancy place. You've got an area that's under construction, and then you have observation deck and another little bar area. So it's a lot of fun kind of putting all these details in there. A lot of fun kind of working on my broken glass techniques, which I'm using over here for all of these many, many, many tiny pieces of blue glass. And then, of course, lots of broken glass technique over there using the dark translucent glass over there.
What are some of the construction differences, this tower versus all the Technic in the other one?
This one hardly uses any Technic, so I was very worried about it actually being strong enough to support any weight that's being pushed against it. So obviously Lego has a lot of strength up and down, but less side to side. So when I built this, I built an interior elevator shaft that goes the entire length of the tower, and I have Technic beams that are running the up and down and connected in to that elevator shaft. So basically, I could actually grab the elevator shaft and lift the entire mock up just using that. So it's actually very strong and kind of all built around that, with some Technic beams going out that are actually supporting each of the levels. But outside of that, the rest of this is just kind of using regular Lego brick and constructed from the ground moving up, whereas this was basically building the entire Technic interior, and then I had the entire Technic interior complete before I actually started adding anything to the outside of this particular building.
Perfect, and that then brings us to kind of the front section. So what can you tell us about these buildings here?
Yeah, so starting with this one over on the right, this is actually another real building that they filmed in front of. It's not actually in this location for this particular scene, but this is actually the Phipps McKinnon building in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. So a little bit later in the episode, they walk in front of it. It was a very visually distinctive building, and I thought it looked cool, so I figured out where they filmed it, got on Google Earth, did a little walk around of the building, and was able to get a lot of the details that actually went into it. One kind of fun fact about this is that the base of this building is like a men's warehouse kind of suits place, so you can actually see through the window there. There's a couple of little tuxedoed mannequins that I thought was kind of a fun detail to put in there. And then obviously, we don't really see this in the show itself, but I wanted to have another destroyed building, and so basically spent a lot of work just kind of creating a basic sort of office space, because this is an office building, and getting that collapsed in there. So that one was actually a lot of fun to build. And then over here on the right, this is a building that we only see very, very briefly at the very end of episode 1. Can't really tell much about it except for it's a red brick building that's partially destroyed. This was actually the very first building that I built, so I figured it would just be probably like maybe a bar on the bottom and then apartments above that. But this actually gave me a lot of practice kind of looking and building, Lego but partially destructed, working on a lot of that broken glass technique, etc. And so this one was, basically kind of my test, proof of concept, can I get that figured out? And then some just kind of very late additions to this, because there was actually this very smaller version of this that actually was at Bricks Cascade earlier this year, just the front part. This one was in progress during that time, but it wasn't actually done then. So I went in and I added this little, kind of bombed out hole in the ground, which is something that you see a bunch of the times in the show because of all of the destruction and violence that took place during the end of the world. So that was a nice little detail that I added in, and I added a few extra cards as well. One other thing that a lot of people kind of like and comment on is all the cracks that are in the streets. So if you notice, all of these streets are actually built sideways. So they're basically laying flat on top of a Lego base plate, but these are built sideways, and then I basically used slopes and inverted slopes to kind of create these cracks, and then that actually allows me to have different blades of grass and stuff like that are growing through that. That gives it a really kind of very cool, realistic type of feel to it.
Yeah. Those roadways really pull the whole scene together very nicely, and you've got the characters here as well.
Yes, so those are, obviously there's no real minifigs, so I just had to sort these together. So we've got Joel over there, Ellie in the middle, and then Tess. So yeah, that's basically just kind of depicts them very realistically as they appear in the scene, just kind of walking out from the quarantine zone and kind of just viewing this incredible apocalypse scene from what is set in downtown Boston, but obviously this was filmed in Canada.
And what is the setup process like then when you bring this to a show like BrickCon?
It was very difficult, actually. I thought that I had tested this out at home, and it was actually quite a bit more difficult than I expected. So I ended up having to get some friends to actually help out with this. The collapsing skyscraper is actually quite stable. These two buildings are actually touching, but if I move this building away, this would actually stand upright under its own power. It is a little bit wobbly and a little bit tippy, though, and so actually getting these things to kind of connect in using Technic pins was really challenging, because every time we tried to kind of make that connection, it would want to slide apart, and we didn't have I hadn't thought of getting something to brace it and put it into place. So I am planning to take this to future conventions, and so there's going to be a variety of changes that I do need to make. But it was designed to be modular and basically be broken down. So as I mentioned, each of these towers is in two separate pieces. Each individual base plate of the roadway is an individual piece. Then the tan building over here is one, and then the red building and its base plate is all one. So it is modular, and it does come together fairly quickly, but obviously with the weight of these two towers and kind of the unique interaction with them, there are some challenges that I'm going to need to solve for the next time this comes out.
Yeah. Well, it's excellent work and very eye-catching scene, so thank you so much for taking us through the whole build here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.